Okay, shout out to the hot sheet on Twitter for posting this. Go follow them, one of my favorite accounts, and shout out to them. But they posted Billboard's top female solo artist of the 90s decade. Number one, Mariah Carey. I mean, this was a given. If you know anything about the 90s, Mariah Carey owned this decade. It's not even close. She had a number one hit every single year of the 90s. Fantasy, One Sweet Day, and Always Be My Baby alone took 6 months on the Hot 100 chart. Like, that's how long they were at number one. Like, oh, she ate 15 number ones this decade. Like, she was just racking everything up. The albums did super well, with Music Box and Daydream, I think, being the most notable, as well as her debut. So big decade for her. Number two, Janet Jackson. She only released 2 studio albums this decade. She did the Janet album, and then she also did the Velvet Rope, and she did have a compilation album she released, but, only 2 studio albums. And for her to do this well, just really shows her star power and all that. So amazing for Janet. Number three, Whitney Houston. So this was the decade whenever we got the Bodyguard soundtrack, and I love that movie, and the soundtrack was iconic, huge seller for her. And then she also had The Preacher's Wife. She did My Love Is Your Love as well. She did the I'm Your Baby Tonight album. So yeah, very successful decade for her. Number four, Celinedion. I know that she had 2 big albums this decade. I remember one of them was Let's Talk About Love. So that was a big album for her. And then she had another one, and I believe that's the one that had Because You Love Me on it, which is a big song for her. So, shout out to Celine. Number five, Madonna. I don't really know much about her music. I'm pretty sure that this is whenever she released the Erotica album. She got backlash for it. And then she followed it up with Bedtime Stories, which was able to kind of help her image. She worked with Babyface on that, I believe. And then I think this is whenever she released Ray of Light as well. So, kind of a comeback moment for her in a sense. And then next up is going to be tonibraxton, I believe. Again, not very familiar with her either. And I know that her debut was very successful. I know that. So, shout out to her. I know she did Unbreak My Heart. And then next up, paulaabdul. Don't really know that much about her either. I'm going to be honest. And then 8, Shaniatwain. I don't remember what album she released in this particular decade. I know that she was really big on like country pop, big songwriter in that respect, and country was a big thing in that era. Next up is going to be leannrimes. Know nothing about her music. And then last up, rounding out the top 10, is going to be Monica. She did have a good decade. She had the collaboration with Brandy, The Boy Is Mine, which was like, I think that's the most successful collaboration of all time on Billboard. If not, it's like one of, and then she also had her own efforts. She had the song Angel of Mine, she had her Boys Mine album. She had her debut album, she had some good moments. So shout out to Monica. Number 11, Brandy. I mean, the Never Say Never album was a moment for her. Again, The Boy Is Mine, that is a really great album as well. She did Almost Doesn't Count on that album, which is one of my favorite songs by her. So, that was a smash. She had the Moesha show going on at the same time. Like, oh, she was cooking it up. And she did the Cinderella movie with Whitney Houston. Oh, she ate. Next up, Alanismorisette. Jagged Little Pill was a huge album. I remember that. She got Album of the Year at the Grammys for that. And then next up is Jewel. Don't know much about her. Amygrant, same thing. And lastly, Maryjblige. Now, I know Mary released like 4 albums this decade. I think she had her debut, What's the 411, which I remember liking. My Life, probably her best album that I've heard from her. And then she also did Share My World, I believe. And then the last one was the Mary album. So it was a successful decade for her. She did have some hits to her name, Queen of Hip Hop Soul. Now, I wanted to know, who is your favorite out of this list? Who do you think had the best longevity? What albums released by these artists are you still coming back to time and time again? My top 2 on this, Mariah and Janet, my top 2 artists of all time. The albums that I go back to the most from Mariah from this decade, I mean, all of them to a degree, but her debut, I really do love that album. And, just 4 number 1 hits, oh, she ate. I really do love that album. The Butterfly album is her best album, her artistic peak. The vocal layering on there, the songwriting, an artistic peak for her. Daydream, of course. I do love the Rainbow album. A lot of people don't care for it, but, that's always been one of my favorite albums. Janet, I love the Velvet Rope. And there's no skips on it. So, I would say that. For Whitney, the album that I probably go back to most is either I'm Your Baby Tonight or the My Love Is Your Love album. My Love Is Your Love is probably her best album. I used to think it was I'm Your Baby Tonight, but as I really got into the other album, I think that album is better. Celine, I kind of go to more for specific songs. I haven't listened to her discography yet, but I'm meaning to. Let me know which album by her I should start with, because I'm really debating at this point. But yeah, that's kind of my little retrospective on it. And yeah, let me know who you think deserve the top title. What do you think about this ranking overall? What are your favorite songs by all of them, and all the stuff down below in the comments. But this is just a really fascinating discussion.